Hello there, I'm Joel Labi and welcome to View TV News. Coming up on the program tonight, pro-Beijing heavyweight Maria Tam warns Hong Kong's special status will be under threat if it becomes a base for anti-Communist Party activity. Rights groups express concerns over changes to Hong Kong's extradition law as people take to the streets in protest of the proposal. And a document seen exclusively by Reuters could explain why the Trump-Kim summit in Hanoi fell apart. Well, first up this evening, pro-Beijing heavyweight Maria Tam is warning Hong Kong its special status will be at risk if it becomes a base for anti-Communist Party activities. On a radio program, Tam cited the Greater Bay Area Development and Belt Road initiatives as bargaining chips, saying the city's willingness to embrace them will be a factor in the survival of one country, two systems after 2047. Tam also brushed aside concerns that the SAR is mainlandised as part of the Greater Bay Area project. She says Hong Kong has always been the bridge between the mainland and international community, but warned that Beijing won't tolerate dissent.
I think as long as we continue playing that role, Hong Kong for sure can maintain the one country, two systems principle, even after 2047. It won't become one country, one system. The SAR won't be assimilated by the mainland. But if Hong Kong becomes an anti-Communist Party base, then it's hard to say. It will be difficult for collaboration and it will put the one country, two systems principle at risk. Our leader always says that principle cannot be destroyed.
Maria Tam also hit back at comments from pan-democrats who said amending the extradition law is worse than legislating the controversial national security law, Article 23. Tam says the amendment simply matches international standards. The pro-democracy camp took to the streets today, demanding the government shelve the proposal. They called on Hong Kongers to surround LegCo on Wednesday, when the amendment bill is due to be scrutinised. Three human rights groups also warned changes would allow people to be sent to jurisdictions where they would be at risk of torture or other ill treatment and unfair trials. The measles outbreak in Hong Kong is worsening with another case confirmed, this time a security worker at the airport, and that takes the total number of cases to 34. 14 of those who have been infected work at the airport. Now, at the same time, health authorities have cleared 86 of 100 staff who were the first to take blood tests there. Their results show an immunity against the virus. Blood tests will continue at the airport between Monday and Thursday. There's a quota of 100 tests per day. The vaccination priorities are being given to those born after 1967, pregnant women, and those who've come into contact with infants. Meanwhile, Cathay Pacific has responded to criticism of its handling of the measles outbreak with a shift in policy. The airline says pregnant staff who haven't shown immunity to the virus can stay at home with full pay. On Saturday, a group of pregnant Cathay workers threatened to go on collective sick leave unless the company upped its safety measures.
I think their concerns are reasonable because the fatality rate is higher for pregnant women who contract the measles virus. They face a higher risk of coming down with pneumonia or meningitis, so I understand they are worried. They could take a blood test to check whether they have immunity against measles. If they aren't sure, taking leave is a good choice.
At least 9 people have been injured when a minibus collided with a taxi in Sha Tin. The accident took place at the junction of Tai Chung Kui Road and Sha Tin Road. According to authorities, 7 people, including the driver of the minibus, suffered minor injuries, but the taxi driver and passenger were also hurt. All were sent to the Prince of Wales Hospital following the crash, which happened at about 6 this morning. The junction has become a bit of an accident-prone area recently. 3 similar smashes have happened in recent years, including one only 2 days ago. Well, last month's Trump-Kim summit ended abruptly in Vietnam, and for the most part, the reasons behind that have been quite vague. But a document seen exclusively by Reuters might now explain why. It includes a blunt call for Pyongyang to transfer its nuclear weapons and bomb fuel to the United States. Michelle Hennessy has the details.
But sometimes you have to walk.
Talks between US President Trump and Kim Jong-un ended abruptly in Hanoi last month. The second summit between the two leaders was cut short, and neither side has given a complete account as to why. Now, a document seen exclusively by Reuters might help explain it. The document was handed to Kim by Trump on the second day of the summit. It included a blunt call for the North Korean leader to transfer all the country's nuclear weapons and bomb fuel to the United States. A Reuters source who spoke on condition of anonymity said it was the first time Trump himself had explicitly defined what he meant by denuclearization directly to Kim, and the pivotal US expectation that North Korea would transfer those weapons to the United States. Analysts say it probably would have been seen by Kim as insulting and provocative. Their lunch was cancelled the same day.
He has a certain vision, and it's not exactly our vision, but it's a lot closer than it was a year ago.
Trump and Kim failed to reach a deal on the extent of economic sanctions relief to North Korea and the steps it'll take towards denuclearization. The document handed to Kim was meant to show what the US meant by final and fully verifiable denuclearization, according to the Reuters source. It appears to reflect the definition long set out by Trump's hardline White House National Security Advisor John Bolton. Trump had previously distanced himself in public comments from Bolton's approach. The White House did not immediately respond to requests for comment. But on Friday, Trump sounded a note of optimism, saying he continues to have a good relationship with Kim Jong-un and that further sanctions against North Korea were not necessary.
OK, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Well, China's manufacturing sector is showing signs of recovery after a sluggish start to the year. The closely watched Purchasing Managers Index came in at 50.5 for March in figures released by the National Bureau of Statistics today. The 50 mark separates growth from contraction. This month's reading beat forecasts as well, suggesting government stimulus measures may be starting to take hold. Factory output also grew at its fastest pace in 6 months in March, reversing a brief slip in February. Meanwhile, the big four mainland banks sounded a warning about domestic and global uncertainties while posting their full-year profits. Bank of China earnings were up 4%, as were those of ICBC, the country's largest lender. China Construction Bank and Agricultural Bank of China saw profits rise more than 5%. But all were cautious about 2019 amid the ongoing trade war. While economic uncertainty clouds China's economy, Europe's biggest is moving along at a healthy clip. Unemployment in Germany hit a new record low this month and retail sales are up. As David Pollard reports, it's raising hopes that consumer spending will help support growth.
Germany narrowly skirted recession last year. Try telling that to its shoppers. They spent nearly 1% more in February than January, according to new data, in a month when sales were forecast to drop. Employment numbers, too, are making positive headlines.
Although the trend increase has somewhat lessened, the job market continues to grow.
Unemployment dropped to 4.9% this month, a new record low. But for all the good news, there is bad, and much of it can be wrapped up in one word.
Tariffs, which of course have been imposed already in some areas, against the Europeans too, and steel and aluminium, and there are threats of more tariffs on cars and so on being imposed.
Germany's IFO Institute slashed its 2019 growth forecast from 1.1 to 0.6% this month due to weaker foreign demand. A GfK survey this month shows consumer morale deteriorating unexpectedly heading into April. Yet exports could rise 3% this year to a record 1.4 trillion euros, according to the BGA trade group. Though that would be despite the risk of a chaotic UK departure from the EU, when nearly half of German companies doing business in Britain aren't ready for Brexit, according to a survey from KPMG and the British Chamber of Commerce.
That's scary, certainly. It reflects the uncertainties because today all scenarios are still on the table, which is difficult for companies to prepare for.
For the moment, though, the optimists see a glass half full. Even, they say, as slowing exports push Germany's economic numbers down, strong consumer demand could help pick them up again.
Crude markets are on track for their biggest quarterly rise in a decade after oil prices rose about 1% on Friday. OPEC-led supply cuts and US sanctions against Iran and Venezuela are likely the driving factors behind that boost. Pascal Davies has more.
Oil prices are set for their biggest quarterly gain in a decade. On Friday, Brent futures were edging towards $69 a barrel, nearly 28% up in the first quarter. WTI futures were also making strong gains to top $60. The boost is mainly down to an OPEC-led agreement to cut output by around 1.2 million barrels per day and US sanctions on Iranian and Venezuelan oil. But how long the OPEC deal will last is uncertain. Saudi Arabia wants to keep it in place for the full year, but Russia is reluctant to continue the pact beyond September, according to sources. And the US president on Thursday called for an increase in crude production, saying prices were getting too high. As for oil market analysts, they have a different take. Even with the uncertainties surrounding the global economy, most in a Reuters poll lifted their outlook for the first time in 5 months, with one warning of a supply deficit if sanctions and the OPEC pact continue. But the 2019 price view is still below the $67.32 projected in January.
All right, time for a break, but do stay with us. Up next, Washington's Smithsonian National Zoo is doing its part for panda conservation, with a baby panda potentially on the way. More on that shortly.
We enrage. We envy. We resent. We dislike.
We breathe. We laugh. We cry. We live. We disappoint. We frustrate. We bore. We suffer.
We fear, we doubt, we defeat, we empower.
We communicate.
We talk.
We listen.
We learn.
We care. Jazzing up.
Touching hearts.
Paying attention.
Seemingly distant.
Deeply connected.
Welcome back, everyone, here at The Tonight Show.
The long-awaited moment. First time ever on free TV channel in Hong Kong. Jimmy Fallon is here. Loads of fun, new stuff, straight from New York City. With A-list guests from movie stars to athletes, comedians, public figures, and everyone in between.
Please welcome the one and only
The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Monday to Thursday nights at 10:30 on View TV 6. So teenagers deserve something super-duper fun.
Queen threw a slipper at me, again.
I'm all out of wolfskin.
Where'd be a wolf?
The sides of history that nobody teaches you in school.
Is that all?
Experience growing up in the force of nature.
We're taking it all the way to 74 miles an hour.
Evolutionary and revolutionary.
Let's do an experiment.
The most educational teen television that you can get. Weeknights at 8, only on View TV 6. Some say flying is safer than driving a car. But for some, boarding a plane can be a leap of faith. When something goes wrong during a flight,
The engine's on fire!
it can be catastrophic.
Mayday, mayday, mayday.
Investigate the stories behind horrific crashes. Unravel the secrets of air traffic organizations. Solve the air crash mysteries. Mayday. Saturday night at 8 on View TV 6. Making money out of nothing? That's the dream of many.
There's money to be made here.
Let Sarah Moore fulfill your dreams.
Interesting looking things in there.
With the 30 million tons of garbage we throw out every year.
I want to make them commercial, saleable and expensive.
And the help from elite designers and craftsmen.
All the potential.
Turning trash into real cash.
Isn't it amazing?
Money for Nothing Season 2. 7th of April, Sunday night at 8 on View TV 6. Stay informed about Hong Kong, Greater China, and the world. Give you the latest thoughts and analysis on today's news headlines. At the forefront of events that shape our lives. Your weekly news roundup. Weekly review. Tonight at 9 on View TV 6.
Welcome back. The US is cutting aid to 3 Central American nations as President Trump doubles down on his stance over a growing migrant crisis. El Salvador, Guatemala and Honduras will stop receiving financial help in response to a surging migrant caravan headed towards the US-Mexico border. Worries there are also mounting after Trump threatened to shutter parts of the crossing. Nathan Frandino has the latest.
Traffic jams on the U.S. border with Mexico have already begun, and they're expected to get even worse amid threats from President Donald Trump if Mexico does not do more to stem the flow of migrants.
So there's a very good likelihood that I'll be closing the border next week, and that'll be just fine with me.
He told reporters Friday he was considering the action as his government struggles to deal with a surge of asylum seekers from Central America who travel through Mexico. Hundreds of migrants were seen Friday being held in a chain-link enclosure under a bridge in El Paso, Texas. Homeland Security officials say they've been overwhelmed by the increase, with more than 1,200 unaccompanied children and 6,600 migrant families in their custody. The State Department announced Saturday that the rising number of migrants coming from El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras prompted the administration to cut aid from those countries. Trump hinted at the move on Friday.
We were paying them tremendous amounts of money, and we're not paying them anymore because they haven't done a thing for us.
Shutting the southern border would disrupt billions of dollars in trade and millions of legal border crossings. Across the border in Ciudad Juarez, worry is already building among residents.
Both cities are affected because they are tied together, and we depend on them, and they depend on us. Business would end, so we need to get this sorted out soon.
The lines are very long. One has to cross to be able to work, and crossing is more difficult for us Mexicans.
Trump has repeatedly threatened to close the border during his 2 years in office, but has not followed through. Mexico has played down the possibility of a border shutdown, saying their country does not act on the basis of threats.
Tens of thousands of Palestinians have flooded the Gaza border with Israel to mark a year of violent protests and clashes. Demonstrators, spurred on by Gaza's Islamist rulers Hamas, could be seen throwing rocks, burning tyres and, in some cases, even sending children to the front line. Israeli military responded with tear gas and, in some instances, live fire. 3 people died in this latest round of clashes, although compared with previous confrontations, this protest was considered relatively calm. Israel also says militants fired 5 rockets into the country earlier in the day. No casualties were reported. Slovakia has elected its first female president, an anti-corruption advocate who entered the race as a political novice. Zuzana Kaputova, who was a former lawyer, framed her campaign around public anger at corruption. Kaputova, who was running against European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic, won in a landslide with almost 60% of the vote. The elections were held a year after a journalist who was investigating high-profile fraud cases was murdered along with his fiancée. That made corruption a key theme of this runoff vote. Meanwhile, in neighbouring Ukraine, polls have opened in the presidential election, and the man tipped to win the first round is a comedian who plays a fictional leader on TV. Volodymyr Zelensky, who has no political experience, has constantly led in the polls in a 3-horse race against incumbent President Petro Poroshenko and a former Prime Minister. That said, there are 39 candidates running, and with no one expected to receive more than half the votes, a runoff is likely. Now, our next story takes us to Washington. It has nothing to do with politics, though, but rather a panda. The Smithsonian National Zoo has artificially inseminated its resident giant panda, Mei Tiang, and many are now wondering if she's pregnant. Yaharia Yaquez has the story.
The Smithsonian National Zoo will be on baby watch for the next few months after veterinarians and scientists artificially inseminated Mei Zhang, one of the zoo's giant pandas. Nicole McCorkle is the zoo's giant panda keeper.
We'll have to wait and see. Certainly, we'll continue to follow her behaviors, and we'll do ultrasounds as the time gets near.
The team performed the procedure Thursday night in Washington after Mei Zhang's behavior and hormone reports indicated she was ovulating. They then had to act quickly, since breeding windows for giant pandas only last 24 to 72 hours each year. But the difficulty doesn't end there. Zoo officials won't know right away whether the procedure succeeded, since a female panda can sometimes act as if she's pregnant, even if she isn't.
We'll look to see if she's doing some nesting behaviors that she'll probably do either way, whether it's true pregnancy or false pregnancy, but hopefully we'll have some clues as we get toward the end of the summer.
The only way to know whether she's pregnant is to see a fetus on an ultrasound. But because the cub is so tiny compared to its mother, officials said it can be difficult to detect even with the technology. But there's reason to be optimistic. Mei Zhang and Tian Tian, her sperm donor, have already parented 3 cubs.
Okay, time for sports now. Manchester City is back on top of the Premier League table, at least for now, courtesy of a dominant 2-0 win over Fulham. City returned with a swagger from the international break, resuming their quest for 4 trophies. Bernardo Silva scored for the 3rd game in a row with a left-footed strike within 5 minutes. Sergio Aguero then found the back of the net 27 minutes in, extending his league-leading tally to 19 goals. City now move 1 point clear of Liverpool. Crosstown rivals Man United celebrated Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's full-time managerial appointment with a 2-1 win over Watford. Goals from Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial secured United's win. Even though this was far from their most convincing performance under the Norwegian, the win lifts the Red Devils above Arsenal to 4th place. Now, at the other end of the table, Huddersfield's days in the top flight are over for now, with relegation confirmed after a 2-0 defeat at Crystal Palace. The Terriers become only the 2nd team in Premier League history to be relegated before the end of March. Huddersfield have failed to score in more than half of their Premier League games over the last 2 seasons and have netted just 7 goals at home this season. Now, later today, Liverpool has the chance to reclaim top spot when they tackle Tottenham. Their ongoing battle with Manchester City has made this season's title race one of the most exciting in recent years. Jurgen Klopp's men are trying to win their first league title in almost 30 years. And our reporter Oliver Regan has been to the city to assess the mood ahead of a few crucial weeks.
He's the man that's brought belief back to Liverpool Football Club. And now Jurgen Klopp has his own permanent tribute in this famous football city. It may not quite be the Paisley or Shankly gates, but if he ends Liverpool's long wait for a league title, it could be the first of many. They may not get a better chance than this season, but as they battle with Manchester City for Premier League glory, what do those who work closely with the club make of it all?
I think Liverpool fans are confident without being too overconfident. I mean, I know there's been some suggestion that some of the players are getting nervous and some of the fans are, but the reality is I don't think they are. I think they're really looking forward to it. They've got this Premier League title running to look forward to. They've also got the Champions League as well, which we can't forget about.
It's been 29 years since Liverpool's last league title, and although many think City are currently the best side in Europe, Reds fans are staying optimistic they can pip them to the domestic crown.
I think they will beat Man City, definitely.
What makes you say that?
Because we have a very good coach now, and he's very passionate, and the team are very united.
People are nervous, yeah. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we won a big trophy, and people are excited as well, but you can feel the nerves.
Well, I hope Liverpool can do it. We've had a few slip-ups and that, but, you know, with the team we've got and the way we're playing, why not? Why can't we win it?
It's been 29 years, hasn't it? That's far too long.
Liverpool's next match here at Anfield is a test against Tottenham, surely one of the toughest of their title running. Jurgen Klopp's side, of course, hold that points advantage at the moment. Manchester City with a game in hand over their rivals, one that they won't play until the end of April, which means that if Liverpool keep on winning, for now, they'll stay top of the table.
Ashley Barty has produced a stunning performance at the Miami Open final, upsetting former world #1 Karolina Pliskova to clinch her maiden title. The Aussie drummed up 15 aces to win 7-6, 6-3 in what is surely the biggest victory of her career to date. After dominating the first set tiebreak, Barty broke the big serving Pliskova to open the second set, and from there on in, the fatigued Czech, whose semi-final win over Simona Halep finished late due to rain delay, put up little resistance. Barty now moves into the top 10 world rankings, and she's the first Aussie woman to do so since 2013. Now, before we go, a farewell to a Hong Kong icon. The Excelsior shut its doors for good at noon today. The hotel has stood on Hong Kong's waterfront for the past 46 years. The last customer was invited to fire the noonday gun, a naval artillery piece that Hong Kong kept from the colonial era. The hotel will be demolished to make way for a new office complex, and that'll take about 6 years. All right, that is it for now. I'll see you for the Late Show. Bye.
Coming up next,